Welcome to Political News and Views with Congressman Ed Towns of Brooklyn, New York, representing the 10th Congressional District, programming with your concerns in mind. And now, your host, Congressman Ed Towns.
Welcome to News and Views. I am so excited today that we have Elizabeth J. Clark, and we refer to her as Betsy, who is the National President, Executive Director of the National Association of Social Workers, which is a group that I belong to. I am excited about being able to talk to you. We had a very exciting day earlier that we, of course, had Dorothy Heights in. And, of course, I thought that was just so exciting to just have Dorothy Heights, to just listen to her and what she's saying to social workers. What do you think about that?
Well, Dorothy Heights is a social work pioneer. She's like an icon for social workers. She's been around for, I don't know, more than half a century, leading different initiatives. But for social workers, when you see someone like Dorothy Heights, she's just considered the sort of epitome of social workers. So we loved having her there today. But today was exciting because of your bill that you're introducing on behalf of social workers.
Right. You know, I must admit, you know, and thank you for your kind words. But, you know, in talking to her, you know, I found it so, as I looked and saw all the young people there, and she was like referring to our leaders, people who truly been involved in the movement, by the first name. She says, and as I said to Martin, you know, and of course, as I said to Whitney, I mean, she was like calling all these first names, and the young people were looking at her. And of course, in some instances, she was calling names that that they were not even familiar with, you know. And I thought that was so exciting for her to sort of sit there and to talk about these people and that she had worked with and the kind of things that she's done to be able to change this country. That to me was just so.
It was special. Remarkable. But when she linked, in my mind, social work and social action,
yes,
which is, as you know, being a social worker yourself, how important for social workers means social workers have a mission of advocacy for social justice. And so to hear someone talk about all the things that have happened for 50 or 60 years that she's been involved in to try and bring about change in society. And I think what was particularly exciting today were a lot of young social workers were there hearing sort of the queen of social work speak about what it means to be a social worker.
Right, and how the social workers have actually influenced. I mean, that to me was just amazing to hear how, you know, they organized and how they started certain movements and even influenced, you know, the direction of this country. I mean, it was like, I just listened to her, and of course, knowing that she'd been very involved, but some of the things I heard today was just so shocking. Yeah.
But she is able to do that. I mean, I thought when she was talking about the past, then she very nicely linked it to the future and how important it is to be sure that we have adequate numbers of social workers to be there for the future to keep social change going.
Yeah, what can we do to move that process along? Because everywhere you go, people are saying we just need more social workers. There's such a shortage, and that the caseloads are so heavy, and that in some instances social workers even get in trouble because of the fact that they have this heavy caseload,
right,
and some of the things they're expected to do, they can't do them because of the fact that they have so many cases. So what can we do to sort of begin to get more people to change and focus on the field of social work?
We have 600,000 social workers out there today practicing in social work. We turn out about 35,000 more graduates every year, but our problem is we're losing social workers to the field because their salaries are way too low. They're the lowest paid of all the mental health professionals, with the exception of clergy. We find that they are oftentimes in unsafe situations. We just had a social worker last month murdered again in the line of duty in Massachusetts. We had one last year in Kentucky, one in Missouri. So social work safety issues are very important. We let a social worker go out to a family where there may be a problem, and they oftentimes go alone, mostly go alone because their caseloads are so heavy. We don't send a police officer by himself to a house where there's domestic violence. We send 2 police officers who happen to have 2 weapons with them, but yet a social worker goes out alone. So we know that social work safety is an issue. The caseload size is just unbelievable, and a lot of places have downsized, saying we can't afford social workers. Well, it seems to me, if you think about the role social workers play and how important they are to the fabric of our society, we can't afford not to have social workers. I think the legislation that you've just introduced is the step first step in the right direction of saying government has to reinvest in the profession of social work, because we're what sort of keeps the fabric of society together.
I think that is so important, and I think that we have to continue to get that message out there. Let me ask this now, and I guess it's a good time to ask, because we always feel that social workers, for some reason, do not get involved in the political process, so that they don't run for office. And we have a few here in Congress now. In fact, more than we've ever had. We got 10. That's right, more than we've ever had. And I must admit that I'm excited about that, because they're truly making a difference. What can we do to sort of begin to get social workers to look at the electoral process, and that to sort of say to them, and I really, a lot of times I'm speaking, I say the most qualified in terms of background and training to do the job, is social workers. I mean, they have the training in terms of dealing with individuals. They have the training in terms of dealing with groups, in communities. I mean, they involve in community. I mean, all these things, which makes a legislator very, very effective. Why don't we have more social workers looking at the electoral field in terms of politics?
We actually are seeing more social workers at the state level and the community level get involved in electoral politics. Social workers have always been terrific about voting. I mean, we know social workers vote. We're a very big voting bloc. But I think that we need to encourage more. There are now a couple programs where we train social workers how to become candidates for political office, and we're trying to encourage more social workers to come in. Social workers are wonderful advocates. They have social justice as their mission, and they would be great in any political role. And I think we do need to encourage more people to run for office.
Yeah, I guess the other thing is that how can we bring people in contact, with social workers, other than needing help, but for them to sort of interact. The reason I'm a social worker today, it was so, every time I see Dorothy Height, I tell her this, that it was Dorothy Height, Whitney Young, people like that once I saw it, that encouraged me to go into the field of social work. And I just wonder today if there are people that young folks are looking at them and saying, I want to do that. I want to do what they're doing. I wonder, do we have that today? Because when I look at her, every time I see her, I have to tell her, you're partly responsible for me being a social worker. And I tell her every time.
Yeah. It's funny when you ask that question. The society doesn't understand how broad the role of social work is. For some reason, almost always they think of social work and they think of child welfare. And a lot of social workers work in child welfare. It's a very critical area for social workers. But social workers work in many, many places, including the House of Representatives.
That's correct.
And people don't understand that they work at the individual level, or at the group level, as you said, the community level, the state level, the national level. I think oftentimes people are social workers working in those levels, but unlike you, they don't always identify as a social worker. So by the time they get to another position, they say things like, I used to be a social worker, or I had social work training. But they're out there doing social work no matter what their title. So I think you'll be surprised at how many social workers we have running big foundations. We had a social worker who is the head of security for Coca-Cola at one point. I mean, social workers that are doing many things that we just don't understand that is a social worker. So I think one of the problems is the identity of who is a social worker and what does a social worker do. And if we can fix that problem, then I think we will have more people understanding the broad role that social work can have.